Welcome to Week 8 of the President's Athletic Conference Football Focus. I'm Waynesburg University senior Andy Stanko, and this week our focus shifts to the Thiel College Tomcats. Thiel is one of two PAC programs breaking in a new head coach for the 2016 season. Each week, the PAC Football Focus features one team from around the conference. We'll take a look into the program and highlight Saturday's matchups to get you ready for the weekend with the PAC Pregame Show following the Football Focus. Another Waynesburg University student and I will break down every matchup involving PAC teams in Week 8. Coach Dan Blume was hired as the 26th head coach in Thiel College history in December of 2015. Coach Blume graduated as a two-time national champion as a player from the University of Mount Union, where he also served as an assistant for 2 seasons. Coach Blume spent time on staff for Villanova, Trinity College, and Division II Mercyhurst University in a variety of roles over the last decade to prepare him for his first head coaching job.
I was kind of fortunate in a lot of the places I've been where head coaches have kind of leaned on me to take on different roles and do things from travel to dealing with compliance and roster management and even budgeting and recruiting coordinators and those things. So I was kind of fortunate, over the years to kind of accumulate some experience as far as being in charge of budgets and recruiting plan and dealing with compliance and roster management and some of the things that go into being a head coach. But ultimately it's always a little different when you're running a small business, so to speak, where you got your staff that you're kind of overseeing, who would be your managers and kind of next in line, and then you got all your players, and then ultimately everything that comes from that with extended families and the relationships on campus and academics and everything. So it's definitely a tall toll, but it's something that I'm enjoying so far.
Thiel College is the last program not named Thomas More or Washington and Jefferson to win a President's Athletic Conference title outright when the Tomcats went 10-0 in 2005. However, Thiel has not had a winning season since. For Coach Blume, the task is to turn around a program through recruiting and player development.
I think it starts with recruiting and retaining the right type of people. So we kind of always talk about, we want to go out and recruit Thiel guys. So for us, a Thiel guy is, someone who does the right thing. Ultimately, is he a good man? Does he do what he's supposed to do on and off the field? We want guys that are going to get the grades they're capable of, and we want guys that are passionate about football. So for us, what tends to fit for our school is more of a blue collar. We recruit a lot of first generation college kids and blue collar family type kids. So that's what as we go out, we're going to continue to recruit, kind of tough, hard nosed guys that, want to put the hard hat on and go to work every day and get better. And then obviously we'll continue to work, outreach and recruit some different pockets and areas, whether it be Baltimore or Florida or Atlanta, and try to go find some guys from there. But ultimately you got to do, bring in good numbers as far as, what your program can handle. And then, with that, we want to continue to grow our roster size so we can continue to expand our JV schedule. So it really becomes, recruit, retain, develop. So we want to, continue to work hard at recruiting, getting good players, keep them here and happy with Thiel and in school and doing well academically, and get them good game experiences as young players, and then, develop them into being good junior and seniors for us so that we can kind of continue to roll. Because I think that's been the big thing. The biggest obstacle here the last few years is they're constantly young football teams. And, when you're playing the W&Js and the Thomas Moores, and now, what Scott's going at Westminster, where they've got some older guys that are coming into their own, it's tough to compete with those guys when you're playing with 18, 19-year-olds, and they got, 21, 22, 23-year-olds that have been in their program for 4 years.
There's a lot of teaching going on in Greenville, Pennsylvania, in year number 1 under Coach Blume, as he inherited a Thiel roster with 7 seniors and over 80 underclassmen this season. In addition to the youthful roster, the Tomcats have revamped their schemes on both sides of the ball.
It's definitely been a ton of, teaching, because we came in and, we took over a program that was more of a pro-style offense and, a gap run scheme, and we're more of a zone-based offense and shotgun read. And then defensively, they were a 4-3 defense, and we went to more of an odd front defense and quarters coverage team. So throughout the spring and, even continuing, it's been a maturation process of kind of trying to teach guys and not put too much on their plate, but kind of build them, along as we go and add a little more each week as we think they can handle more. But there's definitely elements of growing pains with being a young team, and the St. Vincent game obviously was a blocked extra point. Return was kind of the difference in the game. So we're definitely making young mistakes, but the biggest thing we're kind of preaching with our guys is just week in and week out, let's not continue to make the same mistakes and grow as a team.
Coach Blume is a newcomer to the PAC, and he's been impressed with the competition that he's seen so far.
I think it's a great league. Being at Mountain, we scrimmage W&J every year, so I've was kind of familiar with again, that was when W&J was the top tier and going to the playoffs and making runs. My view is, if you compared, people argue OAC is one of the top leagues in the country, and if you start talking about them and Wisconsin schools and the Texas schools and maybe even Linfield out west, but I think if you took our top group of teams and matched them against the rest of the leagues in the country, I think it's going to be a top tier type of league. The talent's really good. We were just talking today. I think if you could find me a better 3-3 football team than Carnegie Mellon right now, I'd be shocked. And it's exciting because it's every week you never know. I saw Bethany had W&J on the ropes last week and ended up losing by 1. So it's any week somebody can upset somebody. It's just that type of league. But the top tier teams could be very competitive in any league in the country.
Thiel has a young offense, but it's led by senior quarterback Ryan Radke. Radke is Thiel's all-time leader in total offense, and he's been one of the top dual-threat quarterbacks in the league for the past 3+ seasons.
He does a good job. He each week continues to develop as a leader and kind of take on that role that we're looking for him to. Each week we try to bring him along with his decision making. He still misses some reads and things, but that's a little bit of, he played in this offense in high school, but that was 5 years ago. So he's even still kind of getting a comfort level with the zone read and some of the reads we're asking him to make in the run and pass game. But, Ryan's he's a dangerous player. As we kind of saw last week, as we leaned on him with the quarterback run stuff to kind of try to keep us in the game against Case. So we definitely, utilize his experience and his abilities to, put stress on defenses as we go, because we're not just at the point yet where we can just line up and say, here we come, and we're going to run the ball down your throat. So we got to kind of smoke and mirror some things, and Ryan definitely helps that with his ability to run and pass.
Radke's top 3 targets in the passing game this season have all been freshmen. Deshaun Bracey, Eugene Bailey, and Jaquan Hicks are all making an immediate impact for the Tomcats.
On film, we thought that they would be guys that could come in and compete based on the guys we had here in the spring, and we weren't super deep at receiver to begin with. So we kind of figured some freshmen would come in and challenge for playing time. Based on their film, we knew that Deshaun and Eugene, were big guys that had great athletic ability. So we figured rather be a receiver or safety, they'd be able to kind of add depth or help us somewhere on the field. And then Jaquan, is a little kind of shiftier guy, and kind of same thing. We figured he'd be able to help as a slot or a corner. So those guys, just based on their high school film and athletic ability, we figured they'd be contributing for us this year. And then once we got into camp and kind of actually saw them running the offense and they were picking things up, and we realized that, they were able to compete, right now at the college level. We were kind of like, okay, these guys are pushing. And then, week 1, Eugene kind of earned a starting nod, and Jaquan was right in that mix. And then kind of as things went, they just continued to get better and kind of, became, our top 3 guys.
On the defensive side of the ball, Coach Blume's 3-3-5 scheme evolves week to week to fit the opponent and the personnel Thiel has healthy. The unit that stands out so far in 2016 has been the linebacking trio of Tyron Bynum, Jake Elk, and Doak Walker Jr.
Linebackers definitely our deep spot right now, as far as those 3 guys being able to play true linebacker. And then we have, like I said, Matt Crawford, Justin Johnson, and Ronald Smith are all 3 freshmen that are can play defensive end, hybrid linebacker type positions. So they're definitely, the linebacking core would be definitely the strength of our defense right now.
The next challenge for Thiel is the Tomcats' opponent for Week 8, the Carnegie Mellon Tartans, and an offense that puts up over 35 points and 400 yards of offense per game. And, of course, last season's leading rusher in Division III, running back Sam Benger.
Right now for us, as we're looking at it, we're trying to to schematically put our guys in position to be successful. So, we kind of, again, looking at what might fit, how can we get enough hats to the party, so to speak, where, he's a guy that you can see on film. He runs through a lot of arm tackles. And if you're not sound, and have enough guys in the box to stop the run game, he's going to make you pay. So we're trying to find the best way we can to match our coverages to be sound in the pass game, but also get enough people there to handle the run game, which is what they kind of hang their hat on. So it's going to be a tall task for us. I thought W&J is one of the between them and when we scrimmage Westminster, those two were kind of top defenses we saw billing wise, and obviously they were able to put up 50 points against W&J's defense. So I'm sure it's going to be a tough task for our guys, but we're going to come out battle and see the best we can do to kind of slow their offense down.
Finally, for Coach Blume, his first year at Thiel isn't done when the season ends. Recruiting, evaluating, and strength training are at the forefront of rebuilding the program.
We're already working, hard here with our staff as far as I'm kind of making sure they're contacting and we're evaluating recruits so that, once the season ends, we're kind of hit the ground running with visits and trying to identify guys that can help us, with being freshmen in the 2017 team. And, while they're out recruiting, I'm going to be hard at work here with our guys, kind of doing end of year meetings and getting them started in the weight room and get our plan going. So, it's a constant battle of trying to make sure guys are where they are academically, getting them the help they need to try to help them be successful. And then, once the season ends, it hits, it's hitting the ground running with our strength program and recruiting are the two main focuses to kind of keep building things. And then in a blink of an eye, spring ball will be here.
Thanks to Dan Blume and Thiel College for being featured on the PAC Football Focus. Up next week is Westminster College and head coach Scott Benzel. Stay tuned for the PAC Pregame Show coming up next on pacathletics.org.
I'm Joe Anderko, Commissioner of the President's Athletic Conference. Want to know what makes the PAC so special? Here's a few reasons why.
Comprised of 10 private institutions and 2 affiliate members, the PAC remains unique in this era of high-pressure college athletics. Now sponsoring 21 sports as it celebrates over 60 years of competition, the PAC is regarded as one of the elite NCAA Division III conferences in the nation. Our student athletes excel in athletics as well as the classroom, with numerous postgraduate scholarship winners, over 150 academic All-Americans, and over 900 academic honorable recipients with a 3.6 GPA or higher in the past year alone. Want to learn more? Visit us at www.pacathletics.org or follow the President's Athletic Conference on social media.
Academic and athletic excellence since 1955, the President's Athletic Conference.
Welcome to the pregame show here on pacathletics.org. Andy Stanko with you, and I've got another Waynesburg University student with me, Kyle Dawson, stuck around over fall break here in Waynesburg. And so we'll take a look at Week 8 in the PAC, but before we do that, we'll take a look back at Week 7. And Week 7 featured matchups with a whole bunch of teams at the top half of the conference against a whole bunch of teams at the bottom half of the conference. And W&J, Carnegie Mellon, Case Western, Westminster, and Thomas More all came away with wins, and currently those are your top 5 teams in the PAC in terms of conference records, so they took care of business. However, Kyle, any takeaways from the past week, anything that stood out to you or you found interesting?
I think there are a couple of things, and you said the main thing being that it's chalk, right? The top 5 teams in the conference won the games they were supposed to win, which we expected. But the one really that jumped out at me, and I was sitting at home on Saturday night after our game, for Waynesburg against Thomas More, and I want to hit on a little bit of that too. But 37-36, the J game over Bethany. That's a little surprising to me. Bethany able to accrue over 500 yards of offense. So W&J's defense maybe not so good last week. It's been a defense that has been a little bit up and down.
They were good in the fourth quarter, though. No points for
they
Bethany.
were very good. And a big turnover that set up the game-winning score and interception for W&J too from Torrey Carr. But really, that surprised me that was such a close game. I know that W&J's, and we'll talk about this later on in the pregame show, but W&J's got a high-powered offense. There's no reason to think that they can't score with anybody in the conference. Bethany they did their jobs last week offensively, and they were able to score with W&J. But that surprised me a little bit. The other thing that I'll hit on and I'll hit on the CMU one later in the show. But the Waynesburg was 4 yards and one block on the offensive line or a quicker handoff away from potentially being tied with then at the time number 14 ranked Thomas More. Last week it would have been going into halftime and could have been 7-7. Instead, a turnover, a fumble, it goes the other way. Thomas More ends up scoring, ends up blowing Waynesburg out of the water really last week, a 40-7 final. But it was surprising to me, and I wasn't so much surprised that Waynesburg's defense was able to hold Thomas More at bay for the majority of the first half, but how, I wouldn't say lackluster, but how lackluster Thomas Moore's offense was in the
we've
first
seen
half.
Thomas More the entire first half against W&J, the first quarter the week before against Grove City, scoreless stretches out of the Saints, but also explosive offensively. We've seen
And
Thomas
they were
More
in the
have,
second half.
yes,
Which didn't surprise me.
not at all. And as far as what I want to point out from last week, Geneva was competitive again, another one-possession game going into the fourth quarter. And again, turnovers really costing the Golden Tornadoes. And for a second consecutive week, no passing yards for the Golden Tornadoes in their triple option offense. That also stuck out to me. But enough with week 7. Let's move on here to week number 8. In our first matchup pits the number 13 Thomas More Saints at the unranked St. Vincent Bearcats. Thomas More comes in 6-1, 5-0 in conference play. St. Vincent 4-2, 2-2 in PAC play after starting the season 4-0. And for the Bearcats, it's a team coming off of its bye week. 2 straight losses for Case and Westminster after starting 4-0. And I know, Kyle, you really think that it was a good time for the bye for the Bearcats.
Yeah, it was. And I know this goes with, I don't want to say goes without saying, but there's a lot of bye weeks, whether it's the PAC, whether it's the NFL, whether it's a college bye week at the Division I level, that you can say come at a really good time. And St. Vincent started off 4-0. A lot of people would argue that they didn't really play anybody. And then they go into the fifth game against Case Western. They get beat around a little bit, 53-28. And then they lose the game to Westminster a couple weeks ago, 37-22, which doesn't look as bad as the Case Western game does. But Westminster's offense isn't nearly as good, I don't think, as Case Western, and we can talk about that again later. But the bye week came at a good time. And you get 2 weeks to prepare, and some teams are using that time. Other teams, I know Waynesburg went home this week to give them a little bit of a break, give their bodies a break. But hopefully St. Vincent, if you're Coach Dulciato and those guys up there, used that extra week. And I know this week was fall break for St. Vincent as well. So I'd imagine with the game this week they were on campus, but using that extra time to prepare for a very, very good Thomas More team. And we'll see how St. Vincent fares. Thomas Moore's got a very good offense, one of the best defenses in all of the President's Athletic Conference, too. They score 41 a game. They only give up 21 a game, and they run the ball, whether it's Tarrant was very good against Waynesburg for the Saints, whether it's their quarterback as well. He's been very good this season. I'd expect Thomas Moore's offense to kind of have its way, but at the same time, St. Vincent's got a couple of playmakers, whether that be DJ Ocean Kelly, whether that be Damon Black on the outside, on the receiver positions for them. They have the guys that can put up some points, too, and make some plays, and they were very competitive a couple of years ago at Chuck Noll Field when these two teams played.
Yeah, last year, 2015, St. Vincent gave Thomas More a game. They were tied at 28 going into the fourth quarter. Thomas More won the fourth quarter and took the game 42-28, but in terms of competitive games the Saints played last year, 3 games were competitive in the fourth, and it was at Case, W&J, and St. Vincent. The Bearcats jumped out to an early lead in that game, had 3 interceptions, including a defensive touchdown, an 88-yard touchdown run from Tyler Donahue. The Bearcats did a lot of things right, and still Thomas More beat them. Chris Tarrant, 141 yards, 2 touchdowns. Cohorn and Vogelpohl, both gone now, but the receivers combined for almost 250 receiving yards and a touchdown each. And for St. Vincent, it was Tyler Donahue running for 158 yards and a touchdown. Shavonte Kraft over 7 yards a carry and a touchdown on the day. The problem for St. Vincent, only passing for 54 yards total. And as we say week after week, when you look at last year's results, these teams are completely different. A lot of the teams in terms of personnel, and St. Vincent has gone from a run-happy offense, especially from the quarterback spot, to one of the most prolific passing attacks with Derek Stewart at quarterback. And I look at the Bearcats, and they're coming off their bye week, and you take a look at the 37-22 loss to Westminster, and going in, Westminster's a great defensive team. What concerns me is the fact that the Titans scored 37 points, put up over 450 yards of total offense, and it could have been even worse. St. Vincent had 3 red zone wins, holding Westminster to a field goal on a drive that started on the St. Vincent 8, a turnover on downs, a missed field goal in the red zone. That's good for the Bearcats to be good situationally. I look for them to improve, especially on third down. I was shocked to see some of the numbers. Westminster, 10 for 16 on third down. They converted 4 out of 6 third and 10-plus situations, 7 times on third and 7-plus situations. You want to be in those situations defensively. That means you did your job on first and second down, and it's the chance to get off the field and get your offense the ball. Westminster controlled the ball for 41 minutes, converted 10 third downs to St. Vincent, 3 for 10 on third down, and I would argue that's the difference in that football game.
The time of, I'm not a huge guy for time of possession, but when it is as drastic as 41 minutes to 19 minutes, you're
That's
going
substantial.
to have some form of problem on the St. Vincent defensive side of the ball. That's asking a lot of an NFL defense to be on the field for that long in a 60-minute game. To be on the field for 41 minutes is asking them, all conditioning aside, right, is a very difficult task for any defense to do. And I was surprised, though, just in looking at a couple of numbers, the playmaking ability of Ocean Kelly and Black is there. Both had 5 receptions, both averaged over 10 yards a catch, both had a score. Shavonta Kraft, 13 for 70, that's not bad. Averaging 5.4 a carry, you're really only looking for 3.5, but anytime you can get up over 5, that's a good day for you. He also scored a touchdown for St. Vincent in that game against Westminster a couple of weeks ago. But the big key for I think for St. Vincent here is how well those playmakers can match up. I don't think this is a shootout with Thomas More, but we know that Thomas More can score. It's almost like Case Western. We know you have to put up an X number of points to beat Case Western, and it's almost the same thing with Thomas More. It's going to be against a very good defensive front. They stop the run, and then they have playmaking ability on the outside in terms of their defensive backs that can make plays and limit a passing game. We saw Waynesburg kind of exploit a couple of things, and Tyler Perrone made a couple of deep throws. He made a couple back shoulder passes that were good, but
At the end of the day, no offensive
it was
touchdowns
still good.
for Waynesburg.
Yes, no offensive touchdowns, and the one special teams touchdown that Tavon Johnson goes 97 yards untouched. That's not going to happen a lot in this conference, and that's not going to happen a lot with a special teams to Thomas More that's just as good as any other.
Yeah, and this is a Thomas More team that is yet to lose to another PAC opponent under Coach Scaife here in his second year. And in that win over Waynesburg, didn't allow Waynesburg to score an offensive touchdown. Waynesburg ran for 29 yards on 23 attempts. But Thomas More did exactly what it was supposed to do, even if Waynesburg's offense isn't the most highly touted or highly rated. I was really impressed the one time the Jackets got inside the red zone. Austin Copeland broke through the line, forced a fumble before Perrone could even hand it off to his back. And you saw Chris Tarrant, Javier Pitts, Luke Zajac all run for over 6 yards a carry. Brennan Kuntz, 230 yards through the air, a touchdown, ran for another 60 yards, a 20-yard touchdown run. This Saints team has gotten through its hardest part of the schedule, W&J, CMU, at Westminster. We've been saying week after week after week, the biggest test left is at St. Vincent. And the Bearcats, 2-game losing streak. They have areas where they can improve. However, I look for either 3 receivers to have a big game for St. Vincent to win this game, any combination of Ocean Kelly, Black, Kraft, Dalton Dietrich, who's had some big games, or get something out of their run game more than they've gotten in the last couple of weeks. Shavonta Kraft, as you mentioned, over 5 yards a carry. Jannard Dorsett is someone that you can't sleep on as well. But I'll say this, Thomas More has converted 56% of its third downs. Thomas More is awesome in first and second down. Last week against Waynesburg, they were 8 for 12 on third down. No situations longer than 3rd and 7. 7 situations of 3rd and 3 and fewer.
Defensively, you got to get off the field. That's the key for St. Vincent.
So we'll see. And for St. Vincent, I also want to make the point that Derek Stewart is only in Latrobe for 1 year. I know they love him. He's been a great quarterback, second in passing only behind Pete Coughlin. He's looking for that win or a moment here against a really good team. And this month of October has been brutal. And this is a great chance. And one final note, I know Coach Dulciano and Coach Scaife are really looking forward to this game. They've got a great deal of mutual respect for each other, and they worked together in John Carroll for quite a while. So I'm certainly looking forward to this matchup. But let's move on to yet another 1 o'clock kickoff, and this is one I've been looking to for weeks. It's W&J traveling to Westminster. Both teams 5-1 overall. Both teams 3-1 in the PAC. Both teams with just one loss, that coming to Thomas More. And this is a game last year that put Westminster on the map. It wasn't a game that Westminster won last year in week 2 of the 2015 season, but you see 35-31. W&J has to get the game-winning touchdown with under 90 seconds to play against a Westminster team that the year before picked to finish in the middle of the pack. New coach in Scott Benzel. That certainly got some attention. And then Westminster went on to have an outstanding season. Their defense was incredible. They're good again this year. And Westminster led going into the fourth quarter, 24-14. W&J's offense answered the bell 3 times, 3 touchdowns, Ryan Ruffing a game-winning touchdown. And in terms of W&J's offense in the Pete Coughlin era, Westminster held W&J to 297 yards last year, which is incredible. Todd Jeter returned an interception for a touchdown. Justin Shaw had an interception to set up a Westminster touchdown on a short field. And for Pete Coughlin, 210 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. One of the very few games that Coughlin has not thrown a touchdown or has thrown more touchdowns than interceptions. And Westminster won despite Paul Colombo passing 9 for 19, 125, a touchdown, and an interception, with his leading receiver having 15 yards, Demetrius Bentley, 84 yards out of the backfield, including a 54-yard touchdown. Dom McKinley, of course, 163 yards rushing, and Ryan Ruffing on the other side, 4 rushing touchdowns. This was an awesome game last year.
Yeah.
One of my favorite games from 2015. In Westminster with Coach Benzel, they're still looking for that win over Thomas More, Case, or W&J. They had some awesome wins last year over St. John Fisher, over CMU. But to get one over the big 3 right now, they've got all 3 at home. They've already fallen to Thomas More 45-35. They'll see Case in 2 weeks. For Westminster, this is a great opportunity, and this is a game I know Coach Benzel and Coach Sirianni are really excited for.
And they should be. The big matchup here is not Westminster's offense versus W&J's defense. Those are both middle of the pack in terms of scoring offense, scoring defense in the conference. The big matchup here, and I know it's going to go without saying in a lot of respects, but W&J's high-powered offense, 47.7 a game in terms of scoring. They put up a ton of yards, over 500 a game. And Westminster's defense, how well that they can handle that. They haven't really faced, Thomas More is a very good offense, do not get me wrong, but they have not faced, I don't think, a Pete Coughlin W&J offense that has been as good as advertised as they've been in the last couple of years, if not better than they have been in the last couple of years, even without Ryan Ruffing. The number 1 scoring offense team against the number 2 scoring defense, and that scoring defense total by 3 points over Case Western really doesn't mean anything to me. This is still one of the best, if not the best, defense in the conference. The front 7 is good. They'll stop the run. The defensive backs are athletes.
Number 1
to
pass
say the
defense
least.
in the PAC.
Yeah. So how well does not Ryan Ruffing, but Pete Coughlin, fare against this Westminster defensive scheme, whether that's trying to run the football, and I'll bring this up too. A lot of us, and I know it's late in the season, I don't like to dwell too much on 2015 this late, but a lot of us were soul searching a little bit at the beginning of the year. What is W&J going to do without Ryan Ruffing? Ryan Ruffing has been this anchor. It's been Ruffing. Coughlin's been really good. He had a couple of really good receivers, Jesse Zubik being one of them last year, and Zubik to that point too has been awesome this year.
Number 1 in the PAC.
Yeah, he was the PAC Offensive Player of the Week last week with 235 yards, a pair of touchdowns. That's 2 big touchdowns against that Bethany team in that win on 7 catches, which is mind-boggling to me how those numbers are accrued. But that's the 4th highest single-game output in PAC history and is the most by a PAC receiver since we all know this name, Eric Blinn of Bethany, who had 267 yards at St. Vincent back in November of 2013. Zubik has been phenomenal. A lot of the reason is because of how good his quarterback is. Coughlin has gotten better and better and better and better since he's been at W&J. He was a very good quarterback at Upper St. Clair in the WPIL. I know the Western Pennsylvania guys would know about him from Jim Render's Panthers. But I had a chance to see him senior year of high school. If you would have asked me after that game, is he going to be this good, if not a lot better in the PAC at the collegiate level? I would have told you I don't think so. But he has proven me wrong, has proven a lot of people wrong, and has played very well, not only this year, but in the years leading up to this year.
Yeah, for W&J, this is a team that's really playing with no margin for error. I know Coach Sirianni, the expectation at W&J is higher than anywhere else. 8-2 last season. Honestly, that's a disappointment. And 8-2 this season would be a disappointment as well, especially
Agreed.
for this great senior class and the career that Coughlin's had. And they've escaped these last 2 weeks. On homecoming 2 weeks ago, winning in double overtime, 55-52 over Carnegie Mellon University, and winning last week, 37-36 over Bethany. W&J trailed 29-20 at the half after Bethany scored on a Hail Mary. W&J trailed 36-30 going into the fourth. Jesse Zubik had a pair of touchdowns in the second half of 72 and 57 yards. The defense held Bethany scoreless in the fourth quarter on a day in which that group surrendered over 500 yards of total offense. Bethany had 7 chunk plays of at least 30 yards. Pete Coughlin came through 320 yards, 3 touchdowns without an interception. Kyle, you mentioned Zubik's great day, 235 yards receiving. Some concerns, though, however, coming out of the Bethany game. Offensive playmakers outside of Zubik. You've got 3 plays of 50-plus yards, including the 2 touchdowns. The next longest offensive play was 18 yards. You've got Austin Kemp, really talking to Coach Sirianni, someone he's very excited about. 97 yards on the ground, over 4 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns. However, he fumbled twice, lost one of them. On third down, the offense was 5 for 14. The offense as a whole lost 2 fumbles, including one in the red zone. And Bethany racked up over 300 yards on the ground, including 151 from the quarterback position. Chase Keenman from Bethany had another great day. So for W&J, those are areas for improvement. And you look at Westminster. Westminster on third down, second and third down conversions, 51% offensively. Opponents only convert 34% of the time. Paul Colombo's a dual threat quarterback. And Paul Colombo, this year, if you want to talk about taking care of the football, 2 interceptions. Westminster is the fewest giveaways in the PAC all season with 6 interceptions, tied with Geneva for fewest interceptions overall. And Geneva only passes the ball a handful of times every game. Yeah. And Colombo's been sacked just 7 times in 5 games. They've been able to protect their passer, be good offensively. We think defense first. That offense has been fine. That offense put up 35 points and puts up 38 points a game, which is something that would surprise you when you think about Westminster. It's defense first. But this is a team that's looking for that first win, that's looking to control the football, and is second in total defense, scoring defense, best in pass defense, 5th in run defense, even though opponents pass for under 4 or run for under 4 yards a carry. For Westminster, this is a great opportunity. For W&J, the stakes can't be higher. They can't lose again. And this should be a really fun one.
Well, here's what it comes down to as well, and you mentioned taking care of the football. Our little thing between the two of us, ball security, job security, and it doesn't necessarily mean someone's going to lose their starting position for one of these two teams, but the turnover battle, and it's coach speak, but it goes without saying again, and that's apparently a common theme tonight for me. But if they can take care of the football, that being Westminster, as they have all year, if they can give Colombo the time, that offensive line is very good. If they can give Colombo the time to sit back and look for splash plays, Bethany made, just looking at their scoring plays strictly, 3 touchdowns of over 40 yards. The Keenman had a 48-yard run. Blake Lipke had a 42-yard pass reception from Keenman, and Tyler Ambush a 44-yard catch.
And Westminster has those guys.
That's 3 plays. Westminster's got guys that can make those plays
Colombo
on the
running,
outside too.
Whether it's Demetrius Bentley in the pass game,
and
or
it could be
teams.
McKinley,
Yep.
right? It could be McKinley out of the backfield.
We had a monster run against Thomas More.
If those splash plays are made for Westminster, that offense will be in good shape to score with this W&J offense.
A really good game last year. This time around, it is in New Wilmington. That's certainly one to watch. 1 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. All right. Next game, it's the Geneva Golden Tornadoes traveling to Cleveland for a 6 o'clock kickoff at Case Western Reserve. Geneva 2-4, 1-3 in PAC play. Case Western 6-0, 5-0 in conference play, tied with Thomas More for the number 1 spot in the PAC right now through 7 weeks. And a night game for Case Western, and for Coach Devilak, good news there. Case is 23-3 in the last 26 night games dating back to 2006. 5-0 in those such games in the last 2 seasons. And last season, Case a 20-7 win under the lights at Reeves Field in Beaver Falls, and lots of defense in that game. Case held under 300 yards of total offense. Geneva held to just 124 yards of total offense. Geneva running for just 24 yards on 28 carries. But per usual, Geneva's a completely different team from last season. And on the other side, Case did not pass efficiently against this Geneva defense. Rob Kuda, 13 for 30 for 163 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He was sacked 6 times. And Case came out with the win, and held the ball for over 35 minutes. So you've got a Case Western team right here that beat Thiel 48-21. And as we mention every single week, Case, currently unbeaten, will not play W&J nor Thomas More on its schedule. So it has an easier time. They need to go unbeaten to keep pace with Thomas More. But they've taken care of all of the teams that they've had to play against. They've won all of their games by at least 3 touchdowns. They can run the ball, stop the run. And for Geneva on the other side, another loss last week, 29-10. Another week, another one-score game going into the fourth, and another time where turnovers really sunk the Golden Tornadoes. So, Kyle, Geneva traveling to Case Western Reserve. What do we have?
People with the in terms of knowledge of the President's Athletic Conference, whether that be football, whether that be another sport, they can look at the schedule for Case Western and see, oh, well, they don't play Thomas More or they don't play W&J. But the stat that you just gave right there is the one, the stickler for me. They have won every game by 3 scores. I'm not knocking them for winning games by 3 scores. I don't care who they're playing. This is all Division III college football. I know that W&J and Thomas More are leaps and bounds ahead of some of the other teams in the conference.
Well, they're the only 2 teams to win the conference outright in the last 10 years.
Win the games that you're supposed to win. And Case Western has done that. I'm not gonna knock Coach Deblack and the squad for winning the games that they should have won. They looked very good against Thiel last week in a 48-21 win. Time of possession wasn't too drastic of a difference for these 2 teams. 5 of 11 on third down, not that great, but better than what Thiel gave in that contest. Case Western's offense, we saw it. Jacob Burke has been really good. Both him and Rob Kuda have ran for 11 touchdowns this season, and Burke has done that primarily in the last couple of weeks. He's just been awesome. And I'll say this, Thiel's defense is not, I don't think, anywhere in the likes of what Case Western's going to face with Geneva this week. Geneva, I'm not normally one to look at a points for versus a points against and say this might be one of the stories of this season, but Geneva, in the 4 conference games that they've played, 94-75, they've only been outscored by 19 points. This defense will keep them in the game. It's a matter of the triple option offense, and I'll bring this up to the passing game for Geneva, which has been pretty non-existent, but rightfully so with trying to learn this new offense. If this triple option can get things going, open up a couple of opportunities in the pass game. I know you were talking with Coach DeMarco. Either one, let's end every drive on a kick, meaning a field goal or a punt, and don't turn the ball over, or an extra point, exactly. Or whether that means just let's wait, let's gel, let's figure this out until that big pass play opens up, and then let's make sure that we execute that pass play, because no passing yards in the last 2 weeks looks really bad to anybody that's just looking at a box score. But if you have the in, like I said, if you know what this offense is going through, changing from what they were last year to a triple option offense is not easy. They have the playmakers on the offensive side of the ball to do it, whether that's Trey Marshall, whether that's other guys in the backfield running that triple option. If they get things going and a couple of plays are opened up, big splash plays for the offense through the passing game, I think we're going to see a much closer game than maybe some may expect out of this one.
I do want to give a big-time shout-out to the Geneva defense for the performance last week in the 29-10 loss. That game could have been so much uglier. The defense picked up the offense twice in the first quarter after fumbles in the first quarter. Geneva's defense made a stop on 4th and goal after a fumble set up CMU inside the Geneva 10, forced a punt as well after CMU took over in the Geneva 35. Sam Benger was limited to 118 yards on 30 carries. That's under 4 yards a carry. His longest run on the day was 12 yards. That is outstanding, bar none. This Geneva defense is legit. And talking to Coach DeMarco, he said one thing, that when they practice, their pad level is great. And against CMU, I can believe it. Holding a guy in Sam Benger to 118 yards, under 4 yards a carry, that's amazing. But you mentioned the passing yards, 0 for 4, 2 sacks. Coach DeMarco mentioned to me that that they're building right now. They're not at the point where when they call the pass play, you better hit the guy.
Yeah.
They're not there yet. It's just advancing every week, continuing to improve incrementally and master that offense. And
They're engrossed in
Yes.
that process, which
Yes, they are.
is good to see from a process people.
yeah, they ran for 102 yards on 46 carries. That's not what you're looking for, but hats off to CMU for D'ing them up. For Case Western, we saw Rob Kuda really open it up last week against Thiel. 48-21 winners were Case. Rob Kuda touchdown passes of 60 and 72 yards to Brendan Lynch, who had over 200 yards receiving.
And he's been awesome
Yep.
this year too for
And
Case.
if it wasn't for Zubik, he would probably be your offensive player of the week. Him or Kuda, who had 5 total touchdowns when you account for rushing touchdowns as well. For the first time all season, Case was outrushed by Thiel thanks to Ryan Radke's play. But the Spartans on the year have outrushed opponents by over 1,100 yards in 6 games. That's how good they've been. The offense went to the passing game, 20 yards of completion, 340 yards is the most in passing yards this season, and the defense continues to dominate third down. Thiel 2 for 16 on third downs. Shane Demery, 10 tackles, forced fumbled. He's cruising his way to an all-PAC nod at the linebacker spot. Justin McMahon, another 11 tackles. Case has been methodical in terms of possessing the football, putting together long drives, Burke with some long touchdown runs. Now you add one-play touchdowns to Brendan Lynch, and then you start the game with 4 touchdown drives, a missed field goal. This Case team does so many things well. I'm interested to see how good this defense really is because they played the bottom of the conference in terms of offenses. In terms of scoring offense, Bethany, Grove City, Waynesburg, all have been wins for Case. Geneva's down there as well right now. Case is the number 1 rush defense. I'm interested to see how the run defense fares against this unique look that Geneva's going to give them this week.
Another thing that Case Western does well is they turn you over. And +6 is a margin for turnovers. Doesn't look that great, but it's one of 3 or 4 positive margins that stand out in terms of the conference. Bethany's at +10, Westminster and Thiel at 5 and 4 respectively. I don't really look at 3 as a +3 is really that big of a deal. It's not that game changing, but the turnover battle is something I talked about with the last game. It could be even more important for this Case Western team. They have some guys defensive back wise that we've seen make plays for them this year, whether that be Patrick Cross. He was one of the rookies of the week for the conference a couple of weeks back.
Nick Kwan's been there
Nick
for years.
Kwan has been there and has had his chances to intercept the ball a couple of times. They were able to pick off Tyler Perone a couple of times against Waynesburg, just going off from what I've seen in hand for Case Western. But they're a defense that will turn you over. And this is a game, too, where ball security is huge in this game because Geneva, they can't turn the ball over if they're going to be successful offensively with that triple option. And Case Western at the same right, they've been a team that can turn you over. So Geneva's offense has to be prepared for that.
And I'll say Geneva's defense, to wrap it up, against the 2 best offenses that they played this year, St. Vincent and CMU, the defense played well enough to be in those games, if not win those games. It's a unit that's 3rd in total defense, 2nd and 3rd down defense. Case, on the other hand, has allowed opponents to convert to 16 third downs in 5 games. That's a 21% clip, so a tall task for the Golden Tornadoes in Cleveland on Saturday night. All right, time to get into our final game, our featured team of the week. It's the Thiel Tomcats traveling to CMU to take on the Tartans of Carnegie Mellon University. It is a 1 o'clock kickoff. Thiel comes in 2-4, 1-3 in conference play. CMU comes in 3-3 overall, 3-2 in PAC play. However, don't let that fool you. CMU lost in overtime in week 1, lost to Thomas More 20-16 in Crestview Hills, Kentucky, and lost in double overtime to W&J. And talking to Coach Blume, he was shocked that he was looking at a 3-on-3 team, 3-3 team on tape when he was preparing this week. And last season, CMU took it to Thiel. CMU won by 54 points, 73-19, the 2nd most prolific scoring game in Tartan history. Most points since 1915 for CMU. The game was just 7-3 Thiel after 1 quarter. The Tartans poured it on, though, in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, scoring 21 points in the 2nd, 35 points in the 3rd, and 14 points in the 4th. And the big story, 5 takeaways leading to 28 CMU points. Sam Benger ran for 166 yards, 3 touchdowns. Brian Corey, excellent as usual, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery, and 7 different players scored touchdowns for Carnegie Mellon University. CMU racked up 621 yards of total offense. and finished 9 for 14 on third down. Ryan Radke for Thiel passed for 238 yards and 2 touchdowns, a pair of interceptions as well, also ran for 60 yards and a touchdown. So this is a matchup. CMU, as I mentioned, only losses on the year being extremely close and against strong competition. And Thiel, 3 competitive games to open the conference season, beat Bethany in a shootout, lost to St. Vincent and Geneva in close games before losing to W&J and Case Western by wider margins in the last 2 outings. So Thiel traveling to CMU, an interesting matchup.
Yeah, I think it is, and I think this is going to be one of those games that can truly go either way. Carnegie Mellon, the key for Thiel's defense is limiting Sam Bender. You're not going to stop Sam Bender. He's that good. But if they can limit him to the way, and I'll go back to the Waynesburg game, just being there in person to see this Carnegie Mellon team, they weren't able to do much passing until Klein came in after the starting quarterback went out with an injury. The backup quarterback, Alex Klein, he was better than their starting quarterback that day. Sam Bender held right around 100 yards until the big 60-yard run at the end of the game that broke things open for Carnegie Mellon. If Thiel can do kind of the same thing, and that's, I think, asking a little of this Thiel defense that has just not been awful, but has not been, I don't think, what Coach Blume would want out of that Thiel defense. I would expect that is a big sticking point this week. If they can stop Sam Bender, or if they can limit Sam Bender, I think is the better way to put it. I think they have a good chance to be competing in this game, and we know this Thiel offense is good. We know that last year it didn't have a lot of weapons for Ryan Radke. Radke wasn't playing quarterback the entire year. Coach Blume comes in this year. Radke's back at the quarterback position full time. He's making plays, and I know that your talks with a lot of the coaches around the PAC have re-upped the fact that he is a very good dual-threat quarterback in this conference. He can do it with his legs. He can do it on the air. And he's got a playmaker outside now, whereas opposed to last year, he didn't have. A couple of years ago, he had Marcus Johnson on the outside, and he was very good for Thiel that season.
He's
as
now
a wide
a good player
receiver.
for Slippery Rock.
Oh, he is, and I think that just is a credit to how well he played at Thiel that year. But he's got a couple of guys now. Deshaun Bracey has been good as a receiver for this team. Sam Fitzpatrick has got a couple of receptions. He's still got Horvatitz out there on the outside, and
Eugene Bailey's another guy who's been over 100
Ryan
yards in a game.
Radke can have his way, and I think if Radke continues to play well, whether that be rushing, whether that be throwing the ball, speaking of that, playing well, he will in the coming weeks become Thiel's all-time leading passer. He's 300 yards shy of that, so whether that happens this week or on the 29th against Waynesburg, Radke has been their guy, right? He's been this playmaker for Thiel that I don't think they would want to replace if it came down to it. But he's going to have to be really good to beat this CMU team, and that defense is going to have to be able to limit Sam Bender.
Yeah, the operative word for CMU, and when we talked to, or when I talked with Coach Lackner, was balance offensively, and Alex Klein the last couple of weeks has given CMU that balance, passing for 200 yards, 206 yards, and 2 touchdowns against Geneva. Sam Bender was held under control, but still got his 118 yards, a touchdown, 3.9 yards a carry. The longest run on the day was just 12 yards, but they wore out Geneva. Geneva fumbled 4 times. CMU recovered 3 of them, even though none were forced by a CMU player. That was more Geneva beating itself. However, Geneva 2 for 12 on third down. Geneva only had the ball 14 more seconds than CMU did. Those are wins for the defense.
Yeah.
Holding Geneva to 102 yards for the entire game, all on the ground, no passing yards. Outstanding for a CMU unit that really hangs its hat on rushing the quarterback. And that's a matchup I'm looking for, is this pass rush, Brian Corey and company getting after Radke. How does that work out? And we talk about Geneva making a transition, revamping their whole program, but Coach Blume comes into Thiel. We're looking at more of a zone read offense, which is completely new for everyone. Radke played this offense in high school, but it's been 5 years. Defensively, they're changing a 3-3-5, and offensively, you've got a young offensive line, young skill guys, young guy in the backfield, a defense with injuries where they're shifting guys around in terms of positions. Thiel is making that adjustment as well. And one thing I do want to look at is the fact that the run production out of running backs, Nick Barker's been down. I asked Coach about that, and it's not exactly just him. It's a young offensive line. It's the fact that Case and W&J have some solid run defense units, and the fact that Also, decision making with Radke. It's not just reading defenses and passing. It's reading defenses and do I give it to my running back? Do I keep it myself? Do I make that pitch? Do I not make that pitch? A lot goes into this offense, and even though Radke's the elder statesman of the group, he's still learning in terms of decision-making offensively, whether that be running or passing the football. However, this is a matchup as well. I'm interested to see what Thiel does defensively. In talking to Coach Blume week to week, that 3-3-5 changes. Against W&J, you saw 4 down linemen because they weren't about to blitz Pete Coughlin. Against other teams, you saw more of a stack against Case Western Reserve, and it's been evolving throughout, or a 3-4 more so against Case in the last week, pardon me. So we'll see what they do against a balanced CMU attack. It's been giving up big plays, has been an issue for Thiel in this defense, and that unit, young as well, for a team that only has just a handful of seniors.
Yeah, again, I think the key here is how well that defense and whether they adjust to stop the run, whether they adjust to do whatever they need to do. That's going to have to be the key for this Thiel team on Saturday.
And finally, for CMU, it's a lot like W&J, this Tartan team. There's not a lot of room for error. They've played their gauntlet early on. Last year, they started 2-3 as well. They won out, got to a bowl game, won it for the PAC. I know that's the plan for Coach Lackner, and they have to be able to take care of business against a feisty Thiel team that's looking to improve every week as well. Thank you very much for joining me, Kyle, here over fall break. Thank you at home for joining us. And be sure to tune in next week when I talk to Coach Scott Benzel of Westminster here on PACathletics.org.